Hey there and welcome. My name is Pete and this is the somewhat late channel update video for January, the first one of 2022. It's a new year, we have new music and actually not that much to talk about, but still, let's keep the streak going, shall we? As always, we'll start things off with a look back, not only at the previous month, but at the previous year. I have been thinking about whether or not to do a lengthy month-by-month recap of 2021, but I have to admit, from my perspective, the year wasn't overly spectacular. I still remember starting the year with hopes that 2021 would be a better year compared to 2020 in terms of COVID and being able to actually do stuff, but, well, for the most part that did not turn out to be the case. And so I spent most of the year just working, both at the university and on the channel. This has also brought me to the realization that doing YouTube is still very much a creative occupation and that creativity has to come from somewhere, and at least for me, just sitting at home all day certainly isn't the way. For that reason, I was very happy that at the end of January of last year I found Mutant Year Zero, a game that allowed me to start a fresh new series on the channel. A new series is of course always exciting, but with a game like RimWorld or Mass Effect, for the most part I already know how the creation process will be going. With a brand new game, on the other hand, I experience what one might refer to as productive disruption, which I find sparks creativity and definitely made that series a very enjoyable project. I have already talked at length about how Mutant Year Zero fit the completionist aspect of the channel perfectly, so I'm not going to repeat all of that here. Suffice it to say that the success of that series, in combination with the great reception of XCOM earlier, will probably lead me to exploring other games in that tactical turn-based genre in the future, with XCOM 2 being the likely next candidate. Now, apart from Mutant Year Zero, the first half of 2021 was mostly taken up by our RimWorld Extreme Desert series, which ended in early August after 51 episodes. And 51 episodes, spanning across 1.5 years, that is one hell of a time commitment, and I have to admit, at the end of it, that creative feeling was at times hard to find. That is also why I decided to postpone the new series with the Ideology DLC, because simply put, I had enough of RimWorld for the time being. Instead, I kept the channel occupied with Mass Effect 3 and Mutant Year Zero's Seed of Evil DLC, until in September I was finally able to travel again and took an entire month off for the first time in a long while. And while this might not seem noteworthy for many of you, that month was extremely important for me, not only to put YouTube out of my mind for a moment, but also because it helped me gain a new perspective on that pressure that I sometimes feel I'm under. As a creator with a somewhat sizable audience, I do of course perceive there to be a certain level of expectation from you guys. I see it in the comments from time to time with people asking for the next episode, and there are also a good number of people who actively support what I'm doing over on Patreon, which only strengthens this feeling that I need to deliver regular uploads. On top of that, the number of great YouTube channels out there is steadily growing, so I assume it's only normal to think that if I don't offer a consistent stream of content, then someone else surely will. All of that does of course not mean that I feel like you guys are demanding too much from me, quite on the contrary actually, but still there are quite a few factors at play here, and at the end of the day, I can't deny that I'm feeling some form of pressure to constantly work on the next video. And as a result, I was a little anxious about announcing that I would take an entire month off last year. And well, what can I say? You guys completely annihilated any doubt I ever had. The sheer number of positive, encouraging messages that I received after telling you to basically not expect a new video for several weeks was definitely unexpected, if not to say astounding. And it was that amazing support that allowed me to fully enjoy a holiday break that, in hindsight, I believe was more than just necessary. Basically, what I'm trying to say is thank you for being so understanding and supportive, and for allowing me to regenerate that creativity in me, which ultimately does of course benefit all of us. And with that newfound creativity, I did then finally also jump back into RimWorld near the end of the year, and well, unsurprisingly, the series was once again very well received and led to a nice influx of new subscribers. Speaking of which, we ended the year with 132,125 subscribers, and I am very interested to see where we can take that number over the course of 2022. By the way, YouTube has just announced another sub-purge for the coming days, which in my experience is usually not that big of a deal, but mistakes might happen, so just as a heads up, perhaps you should keep a close eye on your subscriptions for the next few days to make sure that no channels get removed. Now, that brings me to the plans for this year, which are of course not all super duper detailed at this point, but I have a few things on my list that I would like to do this year. First of all, if I find the time, I would really like to get a third series back into the rotation. And I know that this kind of goes against my earlier point of putting too much pressure on myself, but there are perhaps a few changes coming at the university that might allow me to spend a bit more time on the channel, at least for a few months. None of that is set in stone yet, but I am cautiously optimistic. That third series, I think I have mentioned this several times already, is very likely going to be XCOM 2, and I feel like I have to be upfront with this because that series would also include stuff like a character pool filled with members of the community, similar to how Christopher Ott does it, so let's keep the secrecy for some of the other series that might happen in the future. As always though, my main focus will of course be to keep some form of variety on the channel, because I feel like I can bring much more to the table than just entertaining RimWorld and XCOM videos, and as a big fan of role-playing games, like the Mass Effect series for example, I could definitely see us dive into a similar game once that series has run its course. The Knights of the Old Republic remake is reportedly coming, but probably not in 2022, so perhaps we should try out the original first. Alternatively, Dragon Age Origins or even the much less popular Alpha Protocol would also work well as Mass Effect successors in my opinion, and then there is always the possibility of jumping into something entirely different, like a Total War game, or Hitman, or Assassin's Creed, or one of the hundreds of other games in my Steam library. At the end of the day though, there is only so much time, and as much as I would like to play some of the more obscure titles that I own, that wouldn't really be enjoyable if no one's interested in seeing them. So expect a few more votes to come as the year progresses, just as a way for me to gauge what the community might like to see. We did that already at the beginning of last year, but Pete Complete has grown quite a bit since then. Some people have left, others have only recently discovered the channel, so it might be time to get a fresh perspective on your preferences. All of that will come in due time, this just as a quick overview of some of the things that you can expect over the course of the next year. One thing that I would like to see return in 2022 is the AMA or Q&A that I did with Squared Cubed at the end of last year, which is actually the first and only video on the channel where you can hear me talk live. And I feel like doing that once a year is a great way for me to answer some of the questions that I normally don't get to during these shorter channel update videos, and perhaps it also helps me get a bit more comfortable with a live recording session, so that one day we might finally see that Skyrim live stream that I have been talking about for probably a few years now. So yeah, that is a rough outline of what I have planned for the year. Of course, there are a few more things that I don't want to mention just yet, either because I would like to keep them a surprise, or because the ideas are still so vague that there really isn't anything that I could put into words. And that slowly but steadily brings us to the end of this first channel update video of the year, which we will of course not conclude without mentioning a few very important people, namely those who decided to support the Pete Complete Patreon last month. So as always, in no particular order, I would like to thank for their support Mr. Mike, MB, Joshua, Karl Bach, Fan in the Box, Jakub S, Thomas A, Lukas Peter, Lars Moos, Robert Rocky, Philippe Brown, Ellie Piper, Lapis, Genesis Dragons, Farkas, B. Newman, Stebai, Armor, Superior Posterior, Noah Constrictor, Swanson, Ryan Lanovas, Freddy Lexspready, Justin Fitzsimmons, Dr. Tom, Mario Radmacher, Dustin Solik, Levelboy 14, and Solar Bear. I hope I pronounced at least most of your names correctly. Above all though, thank you all so much for your support. And that's it, the first channel update video of 2022 is done. It ended up a little longer than usual, despite me saying in the beginning that there isn't much to talk about, but unless anything crazy happens, for the next months we'll likely be back in that 5-minute range. So for today, I hope you enjoyed a short recap of last year as well as a brief outlook of what's to come, and if you did, then I would be very happy if you could leave a thumbs up. If you like what I'm doing and want to support me and my channel further, then you can of course go ahead and subscribe to stay up to date, grab some merch over on shop.petecomplete.com, or check out and maybe even pledge to the Pete Complete Patreon. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.